Now Sweeney, Dwayne Sweeney! Sweeney's over!
Can you please hand it over to your captain, Dwayne Sweeney?
Welcome to Real Tales with Sweens. This episode, I was lucky enough to sit down with New Zealand and world cricket icon Brendon McCullum. Brendon represented the Black Caps from 2002 to 2016, where he played 101 tests, 260 ODIs, and 71 T20 internationals. He also has a number of record-breaking innings to his name, including being the first Kiwi to score a triple test century. When on the 18th of February 2014, he played an innings that literally stopped the nation. During this podcast, we get a real look into the life of a true great of the game of cricket. We discuss what it was like when he became the first Kiwi to score a triple test century, his captaincy style, scoring 156 not out in the opening game of the IPL, why he implemented the ramp shot versus Shaun Tait bowling 160 km per hour. We also discuss the recent successes of our World Championship New Zealand Test team, the importance of having a plan, setting out to inspire a generation in the 2015 Cricket World Cup, why he retired when he did, and so much more. I have a special offer as the team at Heathcote Appliances have partnered up with the podcast and have a 50-inch Panasonic Smart TV to give away to one of you lucky listeners. Details on how you can enter will be shared at the end of this podcast. As always, the show notes will be available on Instagram at Real Tales with Sweens and the website realtaleswithsweens.com. The website will also have all the links to listen on your favourite platform and some epic content from all the guests. The great people at Good George have a 15% discount available for all you listeners. Simply use the discount code REALTALES before checking out from their online store. The link to their website is also available on the realtaleswithsweens.com homepage. Lastly, I want to say a special thank you to Brendon for making his time available. I know he's an extremely busy man, but wow, what an honour it was for me to sit down and have a chat with a true great of the game of cricket. So join me as we get to know Brendon Baz McCullum. Enjoy the podcast. Cool, alright, I might as well rip into it. Yeah, so I'm just sitting here with Brendon McCullum, a bit of a fanboy moment for me personally. I don't know, had a few phone calls on the way over from some different mates asking if I was nervous to be here, but thank you Brendon for making your time available, mate.
No worries, sweet. I think the spate should take the edge off.
Yeah. I don't know, we might as well start off with something that's topical at the moment and talk about the Test Championship. And, you know, I suppose you'll be heavily connected to that team, involved with a lot of those guys for a number of years. And we talked about it at work the other day. It was one of those moments, and there's plenty of those moments that you've been involved in as a player as well. It was like, for me, we talked about as where were you when this happened, and I think that, you know, that last day, and so many people all around the country and around the world that will remember where they were when the Black Caps won. So yeah, how was that for you, watching that unfold?
Yeah, it was obviously pretty surreal moment. It took me, well, I don't think it's actually sunk in either. I think the magnitude of the task that the guys have achieved is something which will take a long period of time to really sink in, to know that the journey that they've been on for, you know, not just this squad, but the years before, the decades before, the generations of cricketers, I think was constantly shaping the fabric of this New Zealand cricket side. And the last 2 years, I think they've really drilled down on exactly how they want to play and who they want to be and what they want to represent. And I think, you know, they are a fine representation of us as Kiwis. They're humble, they're hardworking, they're innovative when they need to be. And they play the game for the right reasons, and they play the game as a game, which I think is something that resonates with all of us as well. So they were doing all of that without getting close to those moments of securing something which was really, really sizable, those 2 World Cup finals. But for this to now have been converted into a successful trophy and in the longest form of the game, which is the most difficult, particularly with the lack of resource that New Zealand do have. It just makes it such a significant moment for all of us. We have a pledge in the New Zealand side, and in it mentions some words etched into history, significant dates, and I think that's what these guys have been able to achieve. They've etched into history the most significant of dates for the history of New Zealand cricket.
Yeah, well, and for it to come down to a one-off test match, like how many tests end up in draws? It's pretty common. Like there's more draws than there's wins and losses. Surely.
Yeah, it normally is, but these guys have found a way over the last few years to just manufacture results. They push the envelope of aggressive cricket when they need to. They play patient cricket when they have to, and they just know when to stick and when to twist. And I think that comes down to Kane Williamson and his consistency as a player and as a person, that they're able to decipher exactly when the moments are that they need to press go or when they need to just hold on.
Yeah, well, they're such an easy team to watch and support. Like I've been a big fan of cricket my whole life. Like I grew up playing cricket in the summer, rugby in the winter, like most Kiwis did when I grew up. But they're just such a good team to watch. Like they really, from an outside perspective, watching, like they stand for something. Like you can clearly see it. What do you put that down to? Is it just the fact that they are really comfortable in who they are as a team now?
Well, I think it probably goes back to that shaping of the fabric of New Zealand cricket, because I think for so long, we've had great periods. Some periods where teams have really dominated and been right up there world-class performance-wise. And then we've had periods which haven't been so good. And then if we look back on how we've played the game and who's played before us, there's many who all cricket fans will resonate with right throughout the history of our side. But I think this side now is one which they sum up what it's like to be a Kiwi on the international stage. At no stage have they ever bemoaned a lack of resource or funding or opportunity or playing numbers or scheduling. They just get on and do it. And it's only now that they've had that success that you can look back and say it's just such a remarkable story to think that a country of 5 million people with a fan base of player participation numbers of somewhere around 130,000 for 6 first-class teams, for 20 contracted players.
It's crazy, eh?
And for a revenue stream that doesn't even touch the sides of all the other nations around the world. It's staggering to think that we're able to compete with them, let alone now stand at the very top of the tree. So, and to have done it all the way through in their own style is what really is the most, from my point of view, is the most proud, because these guys have been authentic throughout, and they have been challenged about their methods throughout, but they've been able to stick to those methods. They've been able to be authentic to themselves, and now they've been able to have success. So we're pretty lucky to be able to look at this team now as a great representation of the New Zealand public.
Yeah, no, it's wicked, eh? And I think something that sums it up for me too is that second test against England. It looked like we rested everybody, and I don't know if that was what it was, but man, they played so good. Was there 6 changes from the first test at Lords?
Yeah.
And then they just went out and dominated an English test side full of multi-million-dollar players.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, some were forced changes because of injuries, and some were all resting, and some were for opportunity with the bigger fish to fry and bigger prize being the World Test Championship. But, I mean, when in our history have we been able to take out 6 of our frontline players and still decimate a big nation in their own conditions in the purest form of the game? It just doesn't happen. And these are golden years of New Zealand cricket, and I hope it continues. I think it will continue for a while, because there's still some time on the side of some of the real world-class players, the Williamsons, the Lathams, the Southies, the Bolts. The time is running out probably a little bit for the Taylors and maybe even the Wagners.
Yep.
And obviously now Watling, who is such an integral part of that side, both culturally and performance-wise, is moving on. So there is a couple guys moving on, but there's also a lot of world-class players who have been part of that journey who are still going to remain within that side for a period, who will be able to pass on to the next generation what it takes to be the best in the world. So hopefully this era continues for a few years yet.
I do want to you just mentioned him there, but BJ, I played first 11 with BJ back at Boys High. What does someone like him mean to that Black Caps team? You see, I suppose, sort of glimpses through the players sharing their regards through social media and things like that. But in terms of being on the inside, like what is someone like BJ? What's he kind of known for in that environment?
Look, I think everyone respects his cricket. I think he's skill-wise, he's a very good player, or was a very good player. His character is what I think he will be best known for. The tougher the situation, the more BJ would stand up. It was simple.
You can see it in his results, eh?
And even to the point where we sort of made jokes within the side that if we were dominating the game and BJ went out to bat, there's no chance he'll get runs. It's just, he needs it tough, He's one of those rural fighting kind of spirits. And look, he doesn't say a lot within the group, but when he talks, everyone listens. And I think that's his style of leadership is leads by his behaviours, leads by his presence, his calm presence, and his simple methods. And look, he's a guy who his career since he moved into the New Zealand side he's been a part of New Zealand when we were struggling, and he's been a part of the lift to respect to now the part where they are world dominating or world respected and performing international side, and that has married up to his career, and to me that's no coincidence. He's been just a ginormous part of that, and we'll miss him immensely, but in typical BJ style, his characteristics will live for a long period of time within that New Zealand side.
Yeah, well that's I think that's what you kind of see when you get influential leaders or players that are in a group that when they leave a part of them there, and I think it's no coincidence in terms of you stepping away from the game and then the way the teams continued to play. Like they play with that confidence like you did because you were their leader for such a long period of time, and then they were, I suppose, living and breathing that with you, and it just became part of like them as individuals and I suppose the identity of the team. And when you do have such influential people involved for such a long period of time, there's no surprise that continues on.
Yeah, and that's what ultimately what the goal is, right? You want to, when you come into this game, any professional sport, and I think even more so in the New Zealand psyche because it's drilled into us from past generations, but you want to leave the game, the jersey, the cap in a better place than what you found it. And once you understand that you are just a custodian of that spot and you are just passing through in terms of the history of our game, then I think it makes it easier to understand that, and then it makes it easier to understand the responsibilities that come with that and the decisions that you have to make to be able to ensure that you do leave it in a better place. And I guess the greatest mark of respect is if the team and whoever takes over from you is able to improve on the performance that you had prior to that. And I guess for me that was one thing I'm quite proud of, is that I stepped away at the right time, because from an egotistical point of view you can easily hang around in international sport because of the accolades that come with it and the fanfare and the financial gains, etc. But there's got to come a time where you know that what you've done you can't add much more to, and the time is right for someone else to come in and take the team in a new direction. And that's why I stepped away at a relatively young age. I'd been captain for a few years, and my style of leadership is quite consuming, because I invest in all of my players, and I invest in not just them as players but them as people, and understand what's going on in their lives and try and get to know their families and everything, and the reasons which start playing this game, and ask them to trust me out on the field, and for that to happen they need to trust me off the field as well. So it was quite a consuming period of time, but then when I left I knew that team was ready to head to a different direction, and that was that Kane was going to add a level of consistency which I wasn't going to be able to add, and that's okay. I never wanted to be a consistent player. I knew early on that I was never going to be. It wasn't what fueled me. I wanted to touch great moments, and I wanted to experience moments of euphoria where I felt that no one else could have done some of those things, or if they had, they would have had to achieve something special. I had a few of those, and what it did
More than
mean
a few.
there'd be a lot of inconsistencies which came with it as well.
Yeah.
But that's okay, and I think I was very lucky that my style and my opportunity to lead New Zealand coincided with what we needed at that point in time, which was an element of bravery and courage to try and take on some of the oppositions and try and get a little bit more of that soul back. And it worked at that time, and then the handover worked, and what we've seen is New Zealand go to a new level under Kane's leadership, and that's probably what I'm most proud of, and why I still love watching the guys play, and why I'm a sympathetic ear if they ever need anything, or even a challenging ear as well if they do need challenged, because they know that when they pick up the phone and they ring me, they know they'll get honesty and from a place of good intentions.
Yeah. Speaking of bravery, ramping Shaun Tait.
I sort of had to, because I'd got a duck in the game before, and that was such a big series, especially being relatively young in the side, and I was thrust into that role where I was trying to land the first punch on the opposition, and I was given a bit of freedom from the coach and the captain to really take on the opposition, and I didn't know that I had the skills to be able to deal with that at the time. I knew that Shaun Tait was going to bowl extremely fast. And
how
they had
fast
some
was he
other fast
bowling
bowls.
then? Like,
he was pretty quick. I think he hit 160 Ks in that game.
that's fast.
Yeah, it was quick. So I guess the next step was, and it's an interesting point actually, because I guess most people would sort of see when I batted and think, oh, he's literally just woken up, grabbed his gear, walked out the bat, and he's just going to swing. But for my style of play, then I never liked to be seen to be training too much, or seen to be overly concerned about anything, or even to be seen to be preparing that much, because it's almost part of the
Persona.
That's right.
Yeah.
But geez, I worked hard on having a game plan leading into a game. So night before a game, or even the morning of a game, whether I might be sitting in my room, might be in the shower, might be having a beer, and I'll be thinking about, right, tomorrow, what's the opposition? Who are the guys on that side who are going to challenge me? Who do I think I can get? What are they going to do? Are they going to try and bowl what length to me? How are they trying to get me out? What's the ground size? What's the pitch likely to play like? What's the normal wind direction of this ground? Where's my get out areas? Where's the areas where I've got to be a bit careful? And so you're formulating a game plan. So then when you're out there that you can be instinctive at certain periods, because you've done the research and you've done the planning.
Yep.
And I think that was something that I kind of, most people who in the tight knit unit would see that. Those
are you
outside
visually
probably
doing
didn't see
this?
that.
Like,
visually doing it.
Yeah, so you're not writing it down or drawing it out. Like,
No.
it's just all internal process.
Yeah, and some days it would take 5 minutes, and other days it would take half an hour.
Yeah.
And some days I wouldn't be quite sure, and that was when I'd need to rely on others. And normally that was in a situation where the opposition had some players who were really not a great matchup for you. So then it was a matter of trying to ditch your ego, trying to be vulnerable enough to say, someone else in my team, can you take this guy because it's not a great matchup for me? I'll take, say a left arm spinner comes on, can you take the left arm spinner because it's not a great matchup for me? But when the seamer comes on, sure as shit, I'll try and climb into him, and that was sort of...
I'll bat 2 metres out of my crease and charge.
Yeah, and also I guess there was times where I kind of knew it wasn't a great matchup, but it wasn't a great matchup for anyone, and we still needed to take the risk. And they were the times which were most vulnerable as a player, and you knew that you were probably not going to work it out, but you had to do it anyway, because you had to still fire a shot.
Yeah.
And sometimes, it worked, and they stopped trying to bowl to your weaknesses, and they started fearing you as a player and started playing the man a little bit. And so those are little things which now as a coach and as a bit of a mentor to some of the guys, you're trying to pass on some of that stuff, because I don't think you won't find that in a coaching manual as such. It's not about how to play a cover drive or back foot punch. It's literally, that's the craft of batting, especially if you're not as gifted a technical player as some.
Yep. But ramping 160 Ks, was that in your process when you walked out there?
Yeah, sorry, I knew I was going to answer the question at some point.
No, that's all right.
So I knew that I had to take him on.
Yeah.
But
was that because there wasn't another matchup from any of the other boys that would be comfortable at that sort of speed?
A little bit, and also the fact that that pitch was going to mean it was a flat wicket, the short boundaries. It was going to be a high-scoring game, so therefore everyone had to be a match-up for you.
Yep.
Regardless of...
Got to take them on.
You had to take them on, because if you had 4 quiet overs against Shaun Tait, you might only get 200 in a 20-over game when 220 was par, or 210 was par. So we had to take on everyone. So I didn't have the power at that point in time to be able to stand there and bang 160 Ks an hour when he's bowling full back over his head. If he was bowling short, it was fine, but I couldn't get his length back. So I knew he was going to bowl full, he was going to try and swing it, he was going to try and hit the stumps. So therefore I had to access different areas. So the only area I could access with absolute certainty if I executed it was behind the keeper. So I tried to use his pace rather than fight the pace. And the boundary was short enough, if I got any of it and I executed, then it was going to be 6 anyway. So that was kind of the mentality behind why I tried to take him on. So, and on that day it worked. Other days it hasn't, but at least the plan was right.
Yep.
And that's why, as a batter, you go back and change room after and you say, was the plan right? The plan's always right.
Yep.
Like, ultimately, right plan or wrong plan, if you believe in the plan, then it's the right plan. Then it becomes about execution. And on that day I executed, other days I haven't. Yep. Then it makes it easier to live with the game, and that's how you have longevity in cricket especially, because you're going to fail more times than not, but you can actually drill down the processes of things and just, did I execute, did I not? Okay, turn the page, move on to the next game, rather than carrying that baggage with you, which does happen a lot of the time for other guys.
Yeah, well, the cricket's like a big one for that, because there's a lot of superstition in cricket too, right? I remember when I played cricket, like something stupid as what socks I wore, like, and then I scored 50, so I was like, oh, those socks are the socks I wear for, like, I don't know, I probably wore them for 4 years. And another stupid thing I did one day was walk down the dairy and bought some lollies on the way to cricket, and then I mustn't have had pockets in my whites or something, and I had a $1 coin and I was like, chucked it in my sock, and then that $1 coin was in my sock for another 4 years. So it is like there's quite a lot of superstition in cricket, eh?
Yeah, and there's a lot of superstition, there's a lot of routines, and sometimes the routines cross over the superstitions.
Yeah.
I prefer to look at them as more routines.
Yeah.
But we definitely had a lot of superstitious guys throughout the time I played. I don't know why it is, I guess because sometimes there are no answers, and so therefore you're looking for
anything.
Looking for Mother Cricket to look after you, so you think if you do the same things, then you might get looked after.
Any funny ones you want to share? Or odd ones?
No, not off the top of my head. I mean, Neil McKenzie from the South African side was probably the most superstitious that I heard about. I think he taped his bat to the ceiling once, so then got runs. So then every time he had to go and play, he'd tape his bat to the ceiling, which is just bonkers. But no, there's a lot of superstitions. Ross Taylor is actually really superstitious as well. Yeah. But I'll let Ross go tell you that, because that's his yarn. He's got many different mannerisms like that.
Yeah.
But again, it's been a good coping mechanism for him to have a long, sustained career too.
Yeah, and part of that, like you talked about, when you're an athlete, you're constantly searching in the game of cricket. You talk test cricket, like, you're going for 5 days. There's a lot of downtime in there, so being able to have a little bit of routine to, I always talk about it in rugby, like being able to switch on, switch off is a real skill, and being able to, when you need to switch it off. And cricket athletes must be the best at it, especially when you see the high-end batters that bat a lot of time in test cricket, being able to stay out there for a day and a half's play, score a shit ton of runs. There's a lot of switching on and switching off that has to happen, because you mentally can't focus for that long. It's impossible. Yeah, so is that a big focus, or is it just something that happens, like you just learn to deal with it?
I think you learn to deal with it. I'm not sure if you can train it. I think come across some coaches who have tried to train it. I think that can create its own issues as well. It's just
because then you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So you're not actually switching off.
Yeah, that's right. Because then you've got to perform a certain routine in between every ball to be able to then. I think the best thing to do is just find something to occupy your mind. That would be my advice. And I used to like doing a bit of gardening on the pitch to occupy my mind, or sort of look around and check out the body language of the captain and the bowler, and just see, particularly if you've tried to make an aggressive play, just to see what's going on in their head and know whether you've sort of got them or not. So I used to try and use those as points. Other times I actually would just look into the crowd as well. You know, if I did find myself getting a little bit tired from switching on and switching off, is just do something which actually doesn't matter. You know, just have a look around the crowd, have a bit of a giggle at something in the up on the embankment, or just find a way to just deal with it, you know, because it's not going to go away. That's just, if you're going to be successful in cricket, you have to be able to find a way to deal with it.
Yeah. In terms of, I suppose, where were you when moments, there's one real massive one in your career. So first Kiwi to score a triple century in Test cricket, and I think the whole nation stopped that day. What was that like for you, I suppose, the morning of? Were you well aware that, shit, this could be the day?
I sort of became aware of it. I used to understand the story, go back just a fraction, and you know, that was a really important series for us because India were number one team in the world at the time. We had been playing some good gutsy cricket without really putting the results on the back of it, and that was under my captaincy, and we had to make a bit of a statement at some point, and that was a good series for it. We won the first test.
There's Eden Park, right?
At Eden
you got
Park.
Double in that.
Yeah.
So you did a double century in that one?
Yeah, and there was a bit more of a free-flowing type
That was an
of
aggressive
innings.
yeah.
Yeah, and then it was only a two-test series, so we had to then win or draw the second one to win that series and make a big statement and put the result on the board. We were obviously under the bat, and then we came out to bat and we were in a bit of strife. And so then it was a matter of just find a way to hang on the back of the speedboat and try and prolong this period and show some fight. New Zealand, they respected us for our aggressive style. They respected us for how we played the game in regards to sportsmanship. But there was still that element of us where we'd crash and burn. And so one thing I always find that New Zealanders want is they don't necessarily mind us winning or losing, but just be tough to beat. Find a way to just make the opposition have to play one more card, you know, make one more play. And then I think us as Kiwis, we resonate with that. I think we know we can't win everything except the All Blacks, but we just want to see that fight and the real sort of tough kind of qualities be exhibited, regardless of how big the challenge.
There was another game for that too. Like I think it was early on in your career in ODI, and you got given out LB and you clearly hit it. And then Kyle Mills and Vittori, Chris Harris was injured and he came in, and Kyle Mills and Vittori nearly pulled it out of nowhere. Do you remember that one over in Aussie? And that was when Aussie were at the
I do
peak
remember
of
that actually.
game.
Yeah, I do. That was the Chapel Hadley series, I think. Yeah.
And I remember that game vividly, just for the grit and determination. Like Kyle Mills was banging sixes, one after the other. Like the game.
Was it the Chapel Hadley or was it a test match? I can't quite remember.
No, it was a one day. It was definitely a one day.
Yeah, but they are the qualities that we want, right?
Yeah.
And on that day and that moment, it was super important. And look, I got a bit of luck along the way. Sometimes you deserve some luck, sometimes you just get luck. And I guess I found the perfect ally in BJ Watling, you know. And for us, it was just every ball. And I think that was probably when it really confirmed to me exactly what BJ was about and how valuable he was going to be for the New Zealand setup. He just stuck to the process. Every ball. It was like every ball, we just kept finding a way to fight, hang in there, get some luck come our way. We never know what could happen tomorrow. So when that was getting through day 3, then turned up day 4 and the same thing. It's just hang in there. Everyone expected us to be wipe the floor with, you know, early on day 4. But it was like, nah, just find a way. You never know. Just keep hanging in. We sort of got through the first session, got through the second. So Jimmy Neesham come in, his sort of say la vie attitude because he was on debut, which again probably was perfect timing for someone like that to come in because they had no scars of previous eras either. And then it kind of built to that, and then we got to that sort of last hour of the fourth day, and the boys ran out of drink, and they're like, mate, just get through this hour. And I was like, we'll kind of saved the test by now.
Yeah.
But I was sort of like, mate, I'm cooked. And they're like, yeah, but just get through it, you'll be right. Imagine how good it would be about the entire day, what you guys have been doing. And I sort of fed off a little bit of Nisha's enthusiasm as well, and clearly the emotion of all the other boys as well. So then I said, okay, sweet, just make sure there's a couple of cold beers in the change room after. If we get through this today, make sure there's a couple of cold beers in the change room. So we managed to get through that day, come off the field, great reception from all the lads. Sure enough, Mike Sandel, the manager, who'd been there a long time, seen through the whole journey. There's 2 beers sitting in a little ice bucket in front of my seat in the change room of the Basin Reserve. I was a champion. So we sat around, we had a couple of beers just to celebrate the fact that, we had a world record partnership for BJ and myself, plus celebrate BJ's 100, Nisha's 100 on debut. And then obviously at that stage, I think I was on 281. Mm-hmm. That was kind of it. Got home, got back to the hotel, pretty exhausted because I never really ate during games either. Mm-hmm. So I was a bit cooked. And then my old man rang and he said, right, I'm down at the pub, come for a beer. I was like, all right, sweet. So I went down. So we went down, had a couple of beers with him.
Was he there for the whole test? Or?
He was actually meant to go home,
yeah.
But he'd booked his flight for a month later. Yeah. Rather than that night. So technologically challenged. Yeah. So then he ended up, he couldn't get another flight, so he ended up coming back. And then by that stage, I was on 280 or something. So I think it was Stephen Bock, who was New Zealand cricket president at the time, just said to him, you better stay, mate. And took him out for a beer and then went and joined him for a beer. Got up in the morning, spoke to my wife, and then turned on the TV. And Martin Crowe was, the late great Martin Crowe was talking about the significance of if we were able to cross that 300 mark that day and what it would mean for all of New Zealanders who had played the game before and who were going to play in the future. And I was like, you're shitting me. So I was sweet until that moment. And then I was like, oh, I've actually got to find more, I was kind of out on my feet. So then got to the ground, sort of tried to steel myself and just say, okay, sweet, well, you can do this, only 19 runs. Got to the ground and I looked around and it was like just people flooding in the gates. And I was like...
Yeah, well, the country stopped. Like, it actually did.
Yeah. And then
if they weren't there, everyone was watching TV somewhere.
Yeah. And then the messages had smashed through to me in the morning as well. So then the significance of it just dawned upon me. And then I got a little bit kind of nervous, and I wasn't normally a nervous cricketer, but I got a little bit nervous, not so much for myself, but for everyone else. Didn't start that well in the first sort of 15 minutes or so. Nicked one behind, it fell short of MS Dhoni. And at that moment, the crowd sort of went, oh, and then at that moment, I just kind of went, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, just play. Yeah. So then I sort of played a couple of aggressive shots, got a few boundaries away, and then obviously got to that moment where it pulled up 300, and I'll never forget that, to be honest, because the crowd, they just did not sit down. It was an incredible reception, and I got the opportunity to soak it up after so long, and I saw what it meant to all of the teammates as well, and it was a pretty cool moment. Didn't last for long though, I got out straight after.
Which is kind of understandable, right? Especially when you hear how you were feeling before the last hour of the day before.
Yeah, that's right.
You're sort of cooked, drained.
Yeah, and then nicked one. I was like, shit. Yeah. But anyway, so that happened, and then we kind of moved on, and now I do understand the significance of what we achieved, and especially now, I guess, the late great Martin Crowe's passed on, and what he did for the game and what he meant for the game, and to see him talk that morning about what it would mean, it kind of resonates with me now for sure.
Yeah, because it was very uncharacteristic innings for you too. So yeah, I suppose it was meant to be. Like you talk about it, you're like, oh well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Clearly it was, because there was a lot of factors there that if you had written the script of how that innings was going to play out, most people would be like, oh, Brendon McCullum won't bat that long. Yeah. Like if he gets 300, it'll be off 180 balls.
Yeah, that's right. But I guess that it was kind of written in the stars, I guess, and it meant that then we won the series, and there was a really pivotal moment for our side that we could achieve something like that. We could do it not just playing aggressively, but we could also fight and scrap and give ourselves every chance. So we weren't just a one-trick pony.
Talking about that, it's meant to be also the first innings of the IPL. So brand new tournament, tons of money getting poured into this cricket tournament. Perfect, the best concept in sport, and it's awesome that cricket is a game that you can have the best of the best be in mixed teams playing together in a country that is just in love with the game, and the fanatical crowds and the rest of it. What was it like playing in that first IPL game? Let alone what you did in terms of your personal performance, but getting ready for an occasion like that. What was that like?
Well, I don't think any of us kind of realised, and I think back to the World Test Championship, and I said it hasn't really sunk in yet.
Yep.
And in time we'll understand the magnitude of what they achieved. I think that was the same thing with the IPL, the first game, is that we're there, but we didn't realise that this tournament would turn out to be the biggest thing, the biggest dance. Just what it's done for the game. It drives the game. It funds the game. The game would be in a lot of trouble without it. And this tournament is just big bickies, and here we were going to get the opportunity to play in it. And this little old South Dunedin boy, is getting a crack at playing in front of 60,000 and playing with some of his heroes and getting paid good money to do it, and representing a country and a province and or city in Kolkata, which has got 25 million people. It's big gear, and I was a little bit nervous about it, and but also I was excited about it because it was kind of what you wanted. It was kind of what you had dreamed of doing, and I don't know why I got the opportunity that night. I really don't. What I will say is that 100% it changed my life forever. One night in Bangalore playing for Kolkata changed my life forever, and it took a few years to get over, because then the level of expectation went through the roof, and I probably wasn't quite ready for that, but I wouldn't change it.
How old were you then?
Well, what was it? It must have been
2008, was it?
Yeah, it was. So I was 27, but 27 who were represented only in New Zealand. Not travelled the world, but not.
Yep.
It's different now, with sharing dressing room with Ricky Ponting and Sourav Ganguly and the likes. It was a different kettle of fish. So yeah, it was quite remarkable, and I didn't think I could achieve something like that. But I guess that's those moments where I mentioned before that if you chase great moments, then you can achieve some great things. And I got lucky a few times that night, and it literally changed mine and my family's life forever. Yeah,
156 in a 20 over game. That's phenomenal. You couldn't, and no doubt I suppose whoever thought up the IPL, they would have just been like, you've created effectively in one innings exactly what they wanted, because you just the best players in the world playing in mixed teams together in a country that loves the game, and then you go out there in the first innings and score 156.
Yeah.
Just like you said, a Dunedin boy in India.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, that's right. And Sourav Ganguly, who was just the Prince of Kolkata, came up to me after and he said, "This changed your life forever." And I was like, okay. And it did. It really did. And yeah, it's just one of those things which timing's everything, right? And you get opportunity knocks, and when it knocks, you want to be ready to take it, because it can have such a huge effect on how your life pans out, and that was certainly the case there.
Yeah, so you mentioned there Dunedin. You're a pretty handy footy player back in your time too. I seen a photo floating around the other day. I actually had a beer with Adam Thompson after we played Old Boys a couple of weeks ago. And there was a photo floating around social media that day. I think it might have gone out, and Adam Thompson, captain of the South Island team, and there's Brendon McCullum, vice captain, sitting next to him, Dan Carter on the other side. Yeah, and some pretty good company there. So footy was that your winter sport growing up?
Yeah, definitely. I actually sent that photo through to DC and I typed out a message, who's the real boss here? But then I deleted and I was like, oh, it's about these old days. But yeah, look, it was pretty cool. It's cool as well to see what everyone's gone on to achieve and,
pretty talented group of people, in that photo.
Yeah, for sure. And all of that tournament, to be honest. So there's some incredible players that represented the other sides in that tournament as well. And that was actually my last ever game of rugby until I strapped on the boots 2 years ago for UMS here in the local competition. I played for the last couple of years, but that was the last game back then, because what happened after that was... So that was the South Island Secondary Schools team. We played in that National Secondary Schools tournament. We lost to Northern A, actually, Northern B in the final. Ben Artinga stepped me on the inside to score under the bar and then converted in the last minute. But and then what happened from there was we're heading into obviously we're leaving school. And then I had kind of an option. I had a choice to make. I was either going to go to the New Zealand Cricket Academy, which was over the winter, or I was going to be a part of the Highlanders Colts squad. And I had to kind of make a decision right then and there. And so I chose cricket, and the game's been good to me since.
Yeah.
So it was the right decision. Yeah, but I mean, I don't think when I say I chose cricket was the obvious option, because I never was really going to be physically big enough, strong enough, or fast enough to make it in rugby. And I enjoyed rugby. I loved the camaraderie of rugby, and I could play a little bit, but I didn't think I was ever going to be, able to really make it on the big stage. So whereas cricket, I probably had a little bit more natural talent at, and it probably suited my physique a bit better too.
Yeah. In terms of that camaraderie side of it, under your leadership, the Black Caps seem to almost have that kind of rugby sort of camaraderie about them. It kind of, from the outside looking in, they kind of look like a footy team that played cricket. Like there was, I don't know. It just seemed that was that a big part of, I suppose, what you enjoyed about the game of rugby, and obviously cricket as well, is that camaraderie and that tightness and that real team emphasis. Because I always look at cricket, and it can be a very individual team sport, because at the end of the day, it quite often comes down to individuals batting well or bowling well, and the fielding aspect is the real team part of it. But when I look at the Test team now, they look like a team a lot more than India do a team. Yeah.
I guess probably yes is probably the right answer to that. I think, maybe sort of slightly one difference is, I guess, with the cricket stuff, you try and... You got the team, but your team is wider than that, because you have to include families.
Yep.
You have to include partners and kids, because these guys are going to come in at 20 and they're going to leave at 35, hopefully, all going well. They're the formative years of your life, where you grow from being a young single kid who doesn't know a great deal about anything, to travelling the world, becoming worldly, developing an understanding of different cultures and ethnicities and experiences, and you'll hopefully meet a partner, and you'll get married, and you'll have kids. So when you leave at 35, you then head off for the rest of your life. So you need to include those guys, the wider support network in your journey, and that's kind of one of the things I was quite big on as well. And I know Mike Sandel, the manager, was big on that too. And our senior players, they really pushed it too, and everyone would travel with their family. So I think that was probably the one difference between rugby and cricket, is rugby's a bit more kind of just who's on the bus.
Yep.
But our bus was just a bit wider. But I think definitely from a sense of team and a purpose, and trying to understand where you sit on the bus and understand what your role is, and know that we're all trying to participate for a bigger purpose, which is the team success, 100%. And that was something we took out of, I guess, the All Blacks, as well as probably our natural upbringing as Kiwis. We all have a dabble at rugby at some point, so it seems to fit authentically with us. So that would be the pros and the cons of that, I suppose.
Yeah, and one thing I did in doing, a bit of, I suppose, research for this, and watching a few YouTube clips last night, and there's little series we sat down and talked with Ian Smith, and you talked. I think it was your last ODI in Hamilton, and you talked about that you asked the team to, if in doubt, play the positive option, and then you said, "Yep, we played the positive option, but we got out doing it." But then it was all about, well, I don't care how much we got; they've got to get, you know, that's what they get. And then listening to that, and then thinking back to the game, and then, you know, watching a few highlights through while you were talking to Smitty, like that was a hell of a team effort in terms of the bowling effort, the bowlers, and the work in the field. And it was ultimately, the game ended in a brilliant run out. So what more team is that? Yeah.
Well, that's right. And I mean, that was a mentality that we always tried to take, really. And I think that was probably a catalyst for change within our side too, is that, you know, there's going to be times where you're uncertain, right? And in all sports, there's going to be times where you do doubt yourself and you're not sure whether your skill level's good enough, or maybe the opposition just looked red hot at the time. There's going to be times where you doubt yourself. But if in doubt, then just take the aggressive option. And at least then you know you've got a bit of a pathway forward. And I think, you know, that was something I was quite hot on. It may have changed now. There might be the ability to read those situations, or there might be less doubt now. That could be the other thing. You know, they might just have more confidence within the group. But for us back then, if in doubt, take the aggressive option was always an easier thought process to have, regardless of the opposition. So, and I think it helped free us up a little bit. And then it would also permeate through the group that people would know that someone's going to try and take the game on if they're in that situation. So therefore, it takes away that layer of I guess complaint from those around you. We'll just know this is what we're going to try.
This is going to happen. And there's real like in team sport or in most sport, it's so good to well, I suppose we'll talk team sport anyway, but like in terms of team sport, it's so good to know the greater good and the vision of the group, and what the likelihood is going to happen. So like, no doubt in batting, when you're at the other end and you know old mate looks a little bit in doubt here, he's going to take the aggressive option, you can kind of help him through that, knowing what's in his mindset, because it's the greater good of the team, and you're aware about it and you're talking about it. That's
right. And I think it's just a nice mindset to have around your group. I think, you know, it creates a sense of understanding from one another, that this is the style that we're going to try and play. It's not for everyone, but and I think, again, to reiterate, I think this team, they might have less periods where they have these moments because they are way more confident than what they were previously. But for us back then, it was a really good moment for us.
Well, 2015 Home World Cup, I think the whole country fell in love with cricket but that was like a purple patch of form from a number of the big names within the Black Caps. What was that like, playing to that level and being a big part of that, and being captain, that home field advantage, but then also being able to perform like that?
We talked in the group about it, and asked anyone that was part of that 2015 World Cup. At the point in time, it was the greatest time of our lives. It really was. It was kind of the catch cry. That was kind of the slogan. Is the journey that we went on through that period was just unbelievable. We'd seen it in '92. We were all young kids in '92, and we watched the young guns, you know, Martin Crow's side, just captivate the New Zealand audience, and we all went on the journey with them, and we got so close. We just wanted to go on the same journey. We really did. We thought we had a good team. We weren't the most skilled team by any stretch of the imagination, but we had a great feel within the group, good understanding of one another, and we had the right people on the right seats on the bus, and we knew the direction we were heading, and we were going to play at home. I guess there was a couple of slight concerns. One of them was, if we won a couple of games early, and if we got the country in behind us, how are we going to be able to deal with that? That was one of them. To be able to deal with that, the mentality was just enjoy the tournament. So we'd done all our training, so we backed training off throughout the World Cup. I played 21 rounds of golf during the World Cup. it was like we actually just immersed ourselves in the good feelings that were permeating throughout the country towards the team and the tournament, and just lapping that up. And that was just self-fulfilling, and it was, we were loving it as much as everyone else was, and we were loving sharing it with everyone. You walk through the airports and everyone was happy and smiling and talking about cricket. You pick up the paper, there's cricket, front page, back page. Everywhere you go to the ATM, there's cricket. It was like everywhere you went. So that was one of our coping strategies, was to just be a fan as well and just enjoy the journey of it all, and to try and immerse ourselves in the good feelings that the country were caught up in. One of the other concerns were that we were going to have large gaps in our scheduling, and that could challenge us if we started resting and rotating players, because we might lose our rhythm and lose our flow. So to get over that, we actually played the same team up until the semi-final. And that was really, that then was going to bring about another challenge, which was the guys who weren't playing, how we'd be able to keep them up during that period as well. So that was actually I was kind of okay with that one, because I knew that the guys who were going to be on the sideline, they're great team fellas. Yep. They could come in at any moment and you could trust that they were going to perform. They were experienced. They understood the journey that the team had been on from where it was to where it felt now. And we just felt confident that they would be able to deal with that. Plus, I spent a bit of time with them off the field, trying to had a couple of beers and some rounds of golf and things, just to try and get that real good vibe going within the group. And all the group completely understood and respected that those guys were starved of opportunities too. So yeah, there was a few factors we had to overcome, but then once we got going, it just snowballed. And
it was insane, eh?
Yeah, and it just pretty much captured everything that we wanted to be known for as a team during that period. And we didn't win the World Cup, but it kind of didn't matter. Our lives don't need to be defined by whether we had the trophy or not. But what our role was to inspire the next generation. Just like 92 had inspired us, our role was to inspire the next generation of athletes in New Zealand to choose cricket. And I think that's what happened after that World Cup.
And then you look at like the 2019 World Cup. I was sleep deprived that whole World Cup, because just for a completely different reason, like the craftiness and the innings that Kane and Ross played, and they'd scrape 220, 240 on these wickets, and everyone's saying, oh man, it's not enough, and then it was enough. On all occasions it was enough. Like they just I don't know, I suppose the craftiness and the way that they went about, completely different to when it was here. When it was here, it was just Guptill got 237 not out in one of the games.
A quarter final.
Quarter final, and then Southey gets a sixfer down in Wellington. Like there's a lot of big moments like that, like explosive, really really explosive moments. And then 2019's just craft and consistency and that real team sort of feel to it. You could see in the way that they're playing and bowling and fielding, and the amount of pressure that they just applied in the false wickets.
So it was funny with 2019, because I was over there commentating it as well, and we started the tournament really well, and then we buttoned off. We lost 3 games in a row heading into the semi-finals. And I remember speaking to the players individually after that last group game, and you could almost see that they were out on their feet. But then I sort of said to them, it doesn't matter though. It's not, you don't have to win every game to win the World Cup. We know that last time we won every game leading into the final, we didn't win it. I was like, but you guys are literally going into a shootout with India in a semi-final in steaming conditions, and you've got this lineup. But forget the 3 games that have been with you. And I didn't speak to them all together, but I know that the leaders within that group would have been saying the same message, and that's the benefit of experience within them. And I think that's what allowed them to then, the team togetherness, the ability to not panic even though the ship was under immense pressure, and the ability to paint the pathway forward knowing that they had the experience of before, the team togetherness and the skill level in the moment. So I think that was what allowed them to then play the way they did in that semi-final, which was craft, and it was fight and it was courage, and they got the job done. And then the World Cup final, which was just the most remarkable game of cricket, albeit not high on skill level.
Yeah.
It was just the emotional roller coaster that took everyone on was something none of us will ever forget. And I thought that was our chance. I really did.
Yep.
To get a title. But it doesn't matter now because we've got the World Test Championship final. Now we're the World Test Champions, so that's our title, and it means arguably more.
Yeah, definitely. But that 2019 final, like you said it there, like a roller coaster of emotions. I don't think I've cried, laughed, cheered so much in a game of sport ever. It was just constant throughout the whole game. It just tipped and flowed, and it would look like, oh yeah, we've got this, we're going to wrap it up, and then what happens, and the emotions of that team must have been extremely hard for those boys involved in that campaign.
It sure was, and I saw them straight after. I actually went into their dressing room and had a beer after with them, and look, they were broken. They really were, and I didn't hang around too long because, I mean, what can you really say? It's just they were devastated. I thought they would. Yeah, I thought that they might be able to move on a bit easier than that. But even for the next year and a half or whatever, I still felt that there was an element of residue still there from that, and that these guys, whilst they had achieved so much in their careers, they would be haunted by that 2019 World Cup. Particularly the leaders, the Kanes, the Rosses, the Southies, the Bolts. Those guys, I thought they were just carrying it with them a little bit. So I'm really interested to catch up with them soon, because they may just have...
Who cares now?
Correct. They may just have had that moment where they can now move on from that and realise the significance of what they were able to achieve then, albeit not winning. And now they've been able to get that moment that they so richly deserve, and hopefully that just puts at peace the demons of 2019.
Yeah, and then you look at like individuals like in that game, like Ben Stokes, the way that he played, he's a phenomenal cricketer.
Yeah.
And you see that test, that innings he played in that test in the Ashes, when he scored 78 of the last 79 runs or something to win it on the last wicket. Yeah, pretty amazing athlete. Have you had much to do with Ben?
Yeah, I know Stokesy reasonably well. Look, he's a tough bugger too, eh?
Yeah.
He's a good. It's bred into him. And
he's from here.
Yeah, he's tough as. But like he touches magic moments. That's what he's about. He adds a level of consistency around it as well. But he adds some magic moments, or touches some magic moments, and I mean he is the best all rounder in the world. There's no doubting that, and England rely on him heavily. But he plays cricket the right way too, hard, but he's a good fella to sit down and have a beer with after a game, and I wish him all the success as an England player as well.
No, that's cool.
I'm going to head into town in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, sweet. We might as well wrap it up. Okay. Do you want to just give us a quick little bit of insight on your horses?
Well, the horses, it's an expensive game.
Yeah.
But it's a game which I love. I grew up on the back of the harness racing track down in Dunedin, South Dunedin there, Forbury Park, and I sort of always had a bit of a passion for them, more just following them. But moved up to Matamata. I actually bought a couple of shares and some horses, and then got a bit more of a bug. And then we moved up to Matamata about 5 years ago, and now we breed thoroughbreds and we race them. And we're still waiting for that real champion. We've had a little bit of luck along the way, but to me, it's just it's a real passion of ours that we can do as a family, and we can kind of sink our teeth into. And I love also that it slows me down a little bit, because you got to be quite patient in the horse racing game. You send a mare to a stallion, and then 11 months and 11 days later you have a foal, and then you've got to wait the best part of 3 years sometimes for that foal to then make it to the racetrack, and all the way through you're watching it and develop and grow and nurture, and then that's kind of, I guess, what I'm into, into building teams and we're trying to build a racing team.
Yeah.
We're trying to build a horse team, which replicates the teams which I like to try and build around sports.
Yep. No, that's cool. And yeah, I understand that you got to shoot off, but I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I'm extremely grateful for the time that you have given, and for our listeners to be able to get an insight into you as a person and some of those moments. And you talked about touching greatness. You definitely took a lot of us along on that journey with you in terms of fans and supporters, and talking to Timmy now, and it gets pretty emotional when your name comes up, because you talk about building teams and being there and supporting. I think you've left a hell of a legacy in New Zealand cricket, and no doubt world cricket, and you'll be remembered for a long time. So yeah, I'm extremely grateful for your time, Baz, and yeah, thanks very much, mate.
Thanks, Sweens. Pleasure, brother.
Sweet. Thanks for listening to Real Tales with Sweens. I hope you enjoyed that podcast as much as I did. To enter to win the 50-inch Panasonic Smart TV, you simply follow both Real Tales with Sweens and Heathcote Appliances on Instagram. Then share the podcast episode post on your story and tag both Real Tales and Heathcote's NZ. A winner will be drawn on Friday the 23rd of July at 6 p.m. Good luck and thanks for listening.